Good morning. It's Friday, October 4th, 2013. This is the Political Line podcast. Maybe we'll do a podcast today. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe we'll just shut the whole thing down. I haven't decided yet. I'll tell you what. Let's do this. We'll do a podcast today if President Obama promises to defund Obamacare. Then we'll do a podcast. Also, he has to admit he also has to change his name to Ronald Reagan and then move his presidential library to Benghazi. Then we'll do a podcast. That's compromising. That's compromising. I get everything I want, and President Obama has to build his library in Benghazi. But that's where we are. I mean, the Republicans. You have to remember. Look, let's talk about this for a minute. So we're shut down, obviously, and surprise, nutty congressmen are saying nutty things. Yesterday you had what's his name, Congressman Marlin Stoltzman. First off, never trust a guy with the name Marlin. Okay, I think that's your first issue right there. So Marlin Stutzman, congressman from Indiana. Let me pull this up here. He says, "We're not going to be disrespected. We have to get something out of this." I don't know what that even is. So at this point, do the Republicans even know what they want? They're like a bunch of hostage takers who've taken some hostages in a building, and they've demanded, we want $1 million in unmarked bills and a plane to Cuba. And the police show up and say, well, here's your plane to Cuba, and here's your $1 million. And they go, okay, well, now that you've done that, we would also like you to give us. That's not how it works. You've asked for something. The other side has compromised. They have capitulated. They're agreeing to do what you ask them to do, and now you're moving the goalposts and shutting down the government. So we're shut down. This is day 4 of the shutdown. I think it's also important, and this is an important point that I don't think anybody is really mentioning. This is day 4 of the shutdown. 800,000 federal government workers are not getting paid, including the Capitol police officer who was shot yesterday. 800,000 government workers are not being paid, essentially because John Boehner will not bring the bill to the floor for a vote. They have the bill. The Senate passed a clean continuing resolution. This was, last Saturday now. They passed a clean CR. It went to the Senate. Of course, they amended it and put riders on it for birth control and Benghazi hearings and World War II memorials, and they've hung everything on it. All the nutters have hung all the crazy things on it, and here we are now. So they have a bill. They've got a bill there that's a clean CR that passed the Senate, bipartisan, I want to point out. Republicans and Democrats voted to pass this bill that Ted Cruz was going to filibuster, that obviously he couldn't filibuster, right? So I think that is the story that no one is really kind of talking about, is the bill is there. They just have to vote on it. If Boehner brings it to the floor today, right now, this morning, there are 220 votes for this bill right now in the House of Representatives. All Boehner has to do is bring it to the floor for a vote. And then people like Marlin Stutzman can stop saying crazy things, and he's not alone. He's not the only one out there. I mean, there's a handful of them now that are saying nutty things. I don't know if you saw yesterday, too, that Randy Neubauer, Republican from Texas, made a woman, a park ranger, apologize for shutting down the government that he shut down. So I think this is especially astounding because Republicans are outraged. They're outraged by the shutdown of the monuments that they shut down. Yeah, so they shut the government down, and now they're like, why are the monuments shut down? Well, because you shut the government down. That was the whole thing. You guys are responsible for shutting the government down. The monuments are run by the government. You shut them down. So Yeah, I mean this is nuts. Let me read this. This is from the Daily Coast right here, and it says, In an astounding confrontation that took place yesterday at the World War II Memorial in D.C., a Tea Party congressman from Texas appeared to blame the Park Service for denying veterans access to the facility. He then made a park ranger apologize for the shutdown that Randy Neubauer caused. Neubauer went on to say, how do you look at them and deny them access, talking about World War II veterans, to the World War II Memorial? Neubauer asked the unidentified ranger in an incredible exchange that was caught on camera by NBC Washington. So not only did Neubauer confront this woman who's just a park ranger, just doing her job and not even being paid for it, because Randy Neubauer wants, I don't know, he wants Obamacare to be renamed Benghazi Care. We don't even know what the Republicans want. We're shut down. We don't know what they want. They've taken us hostage. They're holding our country hostage over Benghazi Care. I don't even know. The ranger then was interviewed by NBC, and she says, it's difficult. Well, it should be difficult. Scorn the congressman. So they're having an exchange. They're arguing. Randy Neubauer is arguing with park ranger that is not being paid because Randy Neubauer voted to shut the government down. This is amazing. So the ranger says it's difficult in response to, why did you shut the park down? The ranger says it's difficult. Neubauer responds by, well, it should be difficult. And the ranger goes, it is difficult. And she goes, I'm sorry, sir. And then Neubauer just launches into this fit of rage and says the Park Service should be ashamed of themselves. The ranger goes, I'm not ashamed. And Neubauer keeps the argument going by saying you should be. So this is it. This is where it is. Republicans have shut down the government, and now they are yelling at the employees who are forced to work without pay. That's what we have. Go do your job without any pay, and we're going to come and we're going to yell at you too, because we shut the government down and you won't let us access the things that we shut down. And it's not just park rangers, too, that they're yelling at. As of Tuesday morning, 16,000 workers, that's 94% of the Environmental Protection Agency, is shut down. They're done. And not to mention, this also spills over. There are spillover effects into the economy with this. It's not just government workers. So when you get people on the floor like Michelle Bachmann, who, go into the Capitol Rotunda and talk to the press and then say things like, good, I'm glad the government is shut down. The government needs to be shut down. They're discounting the fact that the government employees spend money in Washington, D.C. I used to work in D.C. We would go out to lunch. I had to go to the corner store to get some gum and some and different things. I bought books when I would ride on the train back home. This is the piece that they're missing. If you have a sandwich shop across the street from the Department of Commerce, you count on the people from the Department of Commerce to come in and buy lunch at your sandwich shop. That is how you put food on the table. And when the Can't Shoot 'em Straight gang of Tea Party lunatics shut the government down and nobody from the Department of Commerce is coming into the city, your business now suffers. So you're welcome, small business owners. Republicans will save small business owners from the perils of Obamacare by destroying the economy. You're welcome. Thank you very much. You're welcome, guys. So anyway, Mother Jones actually wrote this piece up here about the Environmental Protection Agency. 16,000 workers, amounts to 94% of these workers. And they go on to say here in the article, they say, to make sense of what it means that over 15,000 EPA employees are now sitting at home instead of working, consider how many facets of the environment the agency has in its hands. The article goes on to say the EPA monitors air quality, regulates pesticides and waste, cleans up hazardous chemical spills, and ensures that people have safe drinking water. Well, good. I'm glad that's shut down, because personally, I don't need some government bureaucrat coming into my house and telling me that the water I'm drinking is safe. I'll just let the free market figure that out. And, if there's arsenic in the water or there's poison or whatever else is in the water, then those people, they can just go buy water from a different supplier. The free market will sort that all out for everybody. We don't need some 15,000 bureaucrats coming to our house and saying, hey, the water you're drinking is clean. That's not really an important service that the government does. It goes on further. The EPA will temporarily halt cleanup at 507 Superfund sites across the country, the agency told Huffington Post. Sites where the EPA was cleaning up hazardous chemicals are shut down in a situation where closing them down won't be an immediate threat to the surroundings. So we're not going to clean up the Superfund sites where all of the spills are, pouring into, all of these chemicals are pouring into the drinking water. We're not going to clean those things up. But we will go out and yell at park rangers because we can't access the World War II memorial. This is what we have. This is the Republican Party that everyone, all of you people, I didn't vote for the Republicans, but some of you out there did. You're responsible for this. So Randy Neubauer is going to come to your house and yell at you for shutting down the government. So the EPA is closed. The park rangers are being yelled at. The Capitol Police are being shot without pay. And for what? We don't even know. We don't even know what the Republicans want. We don't even know what they're asking us for. They have us hostage. They want, I don't know, some of them want Obamacare defunded. I don't know how you defund something that has already taken place. And this let me talk about this for a minute. This brings us to the issue of how do you delay something that has already started? Even the logistics of this. So let's say, for example, for argument's sake, let's say the Republicans win this concession from the Democrats and they agree to a 1-year delay. People have already been signing up now. This is day 4 that people can sign up. What do you say? Okay, well, if you've signed up, you get to keep health care. But if you were waiting to sign up, you have to wait a year now. I mean, how do you even justify that kind of setup? How do you even justify that kind of ruling? I mean, the alternative, too, is to say, well, if you signed up for health care, you don't have health care anymore. Your health care, we're going to take your health care from you. That's the other problem with it. Logistically, how do the Republicans stop people who have already signed up for health care? How do they actually take that health care away from them? I'm not even sure if they can legally do that. Because they're purchasing health insurance from private insurers. And even if they were to repeal Obamacare, let's say they win 2/3 majority in the House, enough for a veto, and they win 60 seats in the Senate, which, and we'll get to the polling on this in a minute, but that doesn't seem likely in 2014. But let's just say, for example, they can win 2/3 majority and 60 seats in the Senate. That would give them enough power to override a veto and pass any bills without a filibuster in the Senate. So, presumably, in January 2015, they would seek to repeal Obamacare. But at this point now, people have been signing up for Obamacare for over a year. Most people have signed up. If they take it away, if they repeal the law, what is stopping the insurance companies then from just running the exchanges as a free market operation? I think a lot of obvious... The law, the Obamacare law, and it's not perfect. I'm not saying it's a perfect law. And it does need some fixing to it, but it's here to stay. And it's, you know what? It's better than what we've had. And at least the Democrats are trying. They're trying to address the policy of fixing these things. But let's say the insurance companies didn't have all the regulations that are in Obamacare, and you start asking these Republicans, well, what would you do differently? How would you address, 40 or so million people without health insurance? What would you say to those people that want to buy health insurance but can't afford it? Darrell Issa thinks you should be allowed to buy from the Federal Employees Health Benefits Plan. I think that's a great idea. I think you should be. Let's put that in the marketplace. Rand Paul basically described a healthcare plan that sounds a lot like Medicare. I think that's also a good idea. But of course, Republicans aren't actually suggesting we put the Federal Employee Health Benefits Program into the Obamacare exchanges. They don't want you having access to that. That was proposed. They said no. Of course, they don't want to expand Medicare to everybody, because that's actually in the law for Obamacare, but the Republican governors are blocking that. And amazingly, the New York Times covered this story. I think it was earlier in the week. It was Wednesday. They covered it, and they said it's actually leaving millions of people, poor people, uncovered by the law, because essentially what has happened is the Supreme Court in the Obamacare ruling said that states do not have to accept the Medicaid expansion. They don't have to do that. It's not something that is required of them to do by law. However, they will still get the money if they don't. So essentially what some states have done, Texas, Michigan's trying to do, Pennsylvania, these states are run by Republicans, Republican governors, Republican legislatures, and what they're essentially doing is they're capping off the Medicaid expansion. So under Obamacare, money is given to the states in a block grant from HHS through the Medicaid funding. Right? And this money is supposed to be used to subsidize people who have below 144% of the poverty level in order for them to get health care at a reasonable cost. So, for example, in Vermont, right, if you make below $35,000 a year, you actually pay nothing for health insurance because of the Medicaid expansion. But in states that did not set that up properly, they now have a group of people that make too much money, they make $14,000 a year, they're making too much money a year to fall into the Medicaid expansion, but they don't make enough money to buy the insurance from the exchange, so it actually makes sense for them to pay the $95 fine. These are people that want to buy health insurance and should be, if the states set the law up properly, these are people that should be able to get insurance at a subsidized rate, at a subsidized level, if these states would just simply set up the insurance exchanges the way that they were actually supposed to be set up. So, and the New York Times here has got some stories here. At 55, she talks about this woman that was interviewed here. She says, at 55, she has high blood pressure, and she's been waiting for the law to take effect so she could get coverage before she lost her job and her house and had to move in with her brother in Virginia. She used to live in Maryland, a state that is expanding Medicaid. The woman goes on to say, would I go back there? She asked. It might involve me living in my car. I don't know. I might consider it. So here's a woman that has a home to live in with family in Virginia, but because Virginia won't expand the Medicaid expansion, she's considering living in her car to be able to get access to affordable health care. How do people hear these stories and then say, we shouldn't expand Medicaid? And there are 26 states. 26 states have rejected the Medicaid expansion. Let me see if I can find what these states are. 26 states have rejected the Medicaid expansion. They're home to half the country's population. 68% of the poor, uninsured blacks, single mothers, about 60% of the country's uninsured working poor in those states. These are 435,000 cashiers, 341,000 cooks, 253,000 nurses' aides. So nurses, help us. We have insurance. Sorry, you make too much money at $25,000 a year. We cannot give you any insurance because you can't afford it. So, so states here have set different parameters for, this is, what am I looking at here? It's the state Medicaid and the CHIP income eligibility standards. Okay, for 2014. So here we go. From the Center for Medicaid and CHIP Services, I think this is an important, and I'll post this up later, but I think this is an important thing to look at because the states, according to the Supreme Court ruling, set the parameters for around people being able to access and get insurance. So here are the states, first off, that do not have the Medicaid expansion. Alabama, Alaska, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Louisiana, Maine. Remember, Maine has Governor Paul LePage up there. Indiana, Mike Pence in Indiana. He's not gonna expand that. Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New Hampshire, Republican governor in New Hampshire, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Utah, Wisconsin, Wyoming. So not really a surprising list of states on here. They all got the common thread of having Republican governors. How dare we give 253,000 nurses aides health insurance? We can't afford that. We've got tax cuts for oil companies to pay for. We've got to give people back their hard-earned money. We can't afford these things. We got to cut SNAP programs. But that's what they're talking about. Cutting. We're not going to expand Medicaid to anyone, but instead we're going to cut SNAP budgets, and we're going to take literally food out of the mouths of people. So I don't know. But this is not a winning strategy for them. The Republicans are hell-bent on doing this, and it's not a winning strategy. There was a poll done, CBS News poll, and it is devastating for the Republicans. 72 respondents overall disapprove of shutting down the government. 76% of independents, 49% of Republicans. Almost half of their own voters disapprove of what's going on right now. Even among respondents who disapprove of the president's healthcare law, 59% disapprove of shutting down the government to force changes to it. I mean, I don't know how this could be any more clear to the Republicans. 59% of people who even disagree with the healthcare law do not want you to shut the government down. They don't care. They're not listening. They're not articulating what they even want from this. They just do not care. And of course, Republicans are getting the blame for this. In that same poll, 44% of people responding to this blame Republicans. 17% blame both sides. So you really have a total of 61% of people giving at least some of the blame to the Republicans. They don't care. They just do not care. People go on to say they're acting like spoiled children. And I would disagree with that. I say that's a mischaracterization. They're not acting like spoiled children. When my child throws a temper tantrum, he knows what he wants. He's usually throwing a fit because he wants a cookie. Or he wants some chocolate milk. Or he wants something. He knows what he wants. That's my point. When he throws a temper tantrum, when he screams, when he throws himself on the floor, when he acts like a baby, because he is a baby, but when he acts like a baby, he knows what he wants. There's an end result to this. I want the cookie. I can't have the cookie. I'm going to act like a baby. I'm going to throw myself on the floor. I'm going to scream. I'm going to cry. I'm going to shut the government down until I get my cookie. There's an end result there. Now, I can hold firm and I can say, I'm not going to give you the cookie. We're not going to have, you're not getting it. You didn't eat your dinner, you're not getting a cookie. That's my position. Your position is I want the cookie. Okay, well, we have a disagreement here. Let's try to work out the disagreement. But you can't negotiate with somebody when you don't even know what it is they want. And I'm not saying the president should negotiate. Under no let me be very clear with this. Under no circumstance should the president negotiate at all with House Republicans until they fund the government and raise the debt ceiling. This is no longer about a political fight anymore. This isn't about winning a political argument and getting your point across and winning the politics of this. That's not what this is about anymore. This is about the Republicans not hijacking the government and using extreme measures like breaching the debt ceiling and defaulting on our bond payments and shutting down the government as order to get leverage to win policy positions. For the sake of future negotiations, for the sake of future presidencies, President Obama cannot negotiate with House Republicans on this. He needs to stay firm. He needs to stand pat. And he needs to say, look, I'm not going to negotiate with you on this. It's not going to happen. And if he holds firm, if he says, I'm not going to do these things, then the Republicans have very few options but to reopen the government and raise the debt ceiling. And that's exactly what Speaker Boehner said. He said, look, I'm a psycho, but I'm not a complete psycho. I'm not going to burn the house down. We'll raise the debt ceiling. We're going to raise it, okay? So he agreed that he'll actually raise the debt ceiling, but he's just not. So now that also come to the table. Why should the Democrats give Boehner anything when he's telling the press, look, if the Democrats don't cave, I'm going to do what they want anyway. And it's not about doing what the Democrats want. I think that's the other important distinction here. People are like, well, if we raise the debt ceiling and we fund the government, then the Democrats win. So are you telling me that the Republican position is keeping the government shut down and defaulting on debt? Is that their position in this? I mean, I think everyone agrees the government should function. I think everybody but Randy Neubauer and what's his name, Marlin Stutzman, these people that are yelling at park rangers and confused about what they even want out of this negotiation. Those people, but they're so far out there, and there's only a few of them. They're a minority of the caucus. I think a majority of the House of Representatives, agree that the government should be open, the government should be funded, and the bills that we've racked up should be raised, as in raising the debt ceiling. So you can have a disagreement about how much the government should spend. You can have a disagreement on what they should spend the money on. All of that is perfectly fine. All of that is perfectly acceptable. And listen, if they want to go to conference after this, they want to go to budget conference and they want to hammer out deals, and the Republican position wants to be, we don't want money going to Obamacare, that's fine. That's a perfectly acceptable position for the House Republicans to have. I happen to disagree with it. I believe Harry Reid, the majority leader, would probably disagree with it as well, and Obama would never sign a law defunding Obamacare. But that's fine for them to have that position. What is not okay is for them to threaten to default on our debt, throwing the entire world's economy into chaos because they don't like a law that passed 3 years ago. All right, well, so we're coming up here. This is the 30-minute mark. I try to keep these things short because I know people don't want to listen forever and ever and ever. But this is our we're going to wrap it up here. We have tons of more stuff to talk about. Maybe we'll do another podcast tomorrow or later in the day. Thank you for listening. Please share this. And this is the Political Line Podcast. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you later.